What's like my tone?
Your motivation is
Homosexuality.
you're gay.
Coming out to your family as queer can be really tough, especially when you come from an immigrant family. Those conversations can start to feel impossible when we're thinking of barriers like culture, age, and religion.
In this video, we are going to explore the 3 key steps that you need to take before coming out and how to approach the conversation. Welcome back, everybody, to the Queer Collective podcast. My name is Karbon.
And I'm Emily.
And welcome back to the show. It's been a minute.
It really has been, but we're so happy to be back.
Brand new studio.
Word.
Brand new us.
Yeah.
Brand new haircuts.
My haircut's been here.
Oh, okay. It's just me.
Yeah. Doesn't she look cute?
I look cute, I think. I don't know.
Super cute.
Yeah. How do you feel about being away for a little bit?
I'm just happy to be back. I think the nice thing about having took a break is that I have so many more podcast ideas. I feel like I'm like ready to spit fire on this mic.
Okay.
So like we mentioned in the intro, we're going to be talking about coming out, but specifically coming out to immigrant families because the two of us
come from immigrant families.
Indeed. For me, would I be second generation if my grandmother was the immigrant?
Yes.
Yeah. And you are first generation because you immigrated here.
Indeed.
Yes. So we faced our own challenges, the two of us, with coming out. And to be totally honest with you, I wish I had a video made like this where it kind of told me what had worked for somebody else, you know, in like a really honest way. Because while we had been gone from the podcast, I had finally came out to my grandmother, who I'm going to reference as my Baba in this because that's what we call her. I finally came out to her, and that was something that had been kind of daunting for
years.
6 to 10 years after
Lord.
I had already come out to a lot of other people. I still hadn't come out to her, and things like that get challenging because for us, it's like our work has to do with us being queer.
Our lives.
Our lives. Everything I do is queer. We're in a long-term relationship. We live together. It's like it starts to feel like you can't say anything to that person who you used to be very close to. So
like, it goes from like keeping a little part of your life to keeping like your whole life.
Exactly. People underestimate how much that eats at you, how hard that can become. It was giving me a lot of anxiety. I kind of realized while I was in therapy that was something that was probably causing the most of my anxiety, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
same here. Yeah. It's like, it's one of those things that I feel a lot of people can relate to, sort of eats away at you subconsciously, even if you're not actively thinking about it. It's something that for me kept me awake at night. Like I had trouble sleeping. I had anxiety like nearly all the time. I also had issues with being present wherever I was. So if I was with friends or whoever, I had a really tough time being present and feeling like I was in the conversation.
It is something that really does get to you.
Yeah.
It got to the point where I felt like I had to do it for the sake of my relationship with my Baba, and also just like for my own sanity and well-being. I couldn't keep lying anymore. It was also becoming a burden to my other family members who were starting to have to like lie for me. Yeah. And it was getting to the point where my Baba was constantly asking me, like, do you have a boyfriend? Are you dating anyone? Like that kind of question just over and over again. And it was just like, okay, I have to tell her.
Yeah.
You know?
And which is something that a lot of people might be feeling right now, whether it's somebody who hasn't come out to anybody yet, or if it's somebody that has come out, but maybe it didn't go too well and they want to have like a second conversation with their family or loved ones, whether it be like a few months later, a few years later, or a decade later. Like, you know, it's always applicable.
Yeah, 100%. And not to toot my own horn a little bit, but this conversation went honestly better than I expected and better than all of my family members expected. Yeah. My mom specifically told me not to come out to my grandma.
Yeah.
And
which is tough.
That was so hard for me to hear. I was like ramping myself up to say it to her. Yeah. And my mom was like, I don't think you should do that. I think she's going to take it horribly. And that kind of like spiraled me. So I felt like I did handle this conversation well. Yeah. I'll tell the story kind of like throughout this as we let you all know sort of what that process was, because I used this, it went really well, and then you kind of felt inspired by the process.
By you.
Yeah, I'm an inspiration to many, and many being Karbon.
It's just one. That's one.
Many.
Okay. Honestly, I feel like like how many people when they're younger in particular, or how I was when I was younger, I feel like I didn't have the tools, as in communication tools, language, or even patience and like emotional maturity to be able to have such a conversation and explain it the way I want to explain it and say the things that I want to say. When you came out to your Bubba recently, at the ripe age of 25, you really had a lot of really mature communication skills that allowed you to have a good conversation. And I became inspired by that. And I was like, I need to apply this to my own life. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've told this story of both of us kind of using this structure to other friends who felt like the anxiety was also consuming them, and they were struggling with insomnia, which is something that I struggled with as well. And telling them, I felt like it kind of unlocked something for them. So I wanted to share this more broadly because I feel like this is something that I needed a couple of years ago and I really would have benefited from.
So let's just jump right into it. Let's identify the 3 main steps that you need to take before even having the conversation. First one being preparing yourself for all outcomes. Thank you. In order to prepare yourself for all outcomes, you need to identify first what is the best case scenario. So when it comes to a conversation like coming out to your family, whether it be your parents, extended family, a grandma, whoever it may be, you have to think of the best case scenario first. So ideally, for most people, I feel like it would be, okay, everybody's extremely accepting, super positive. They want to support you. What are the things that I need to read? What are the things that I need to say? What are your pronouns? What does that mean? And everything is just sunsets and rainbows. That's the absolute best case ideal scenario, I think. But a lot of people don't usually get that ideal scenario. So next we have to think about what is the worst case scenario? Like what is the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen? You need to identify what that would be. This one in particular can vary person to person. I think it's a very individual thing. It's an individual journey when it comes to that bit. And you know your family better than anybody else. So you need to identify what's the worst thing they could say, what's the worst that they could act, what's the worst thing that could happen. And after identifying the worst case scenario, then you need to do a self-check-in. So that self-check-in looks like this. Well, this is the worst case scenario. Am I okay with that? And this part is extremely important because if you're not okay with that, then you need to pause and put this aside for a bit, really reflect internally and do some inner work to hopefully come to terms with that worst case scenario outcome.
Kind of adding in personal experience to that piece, I feel like for us, really what that looked like is weighing the worst case scenario with what you're already feeling right now. So for us, it was like, am I going to continue to keep this secret? Also burden my other family members with having to keep this secret for me as well. Not be able to introduce my partner to my family, miss out on a lot of these like big milestones and also continue to feel this like crippling anxiety all the time. So it was that, or for me, it felt like just getting like fully rejected, her just like not accepting that at all. For me, I knew deep down that my grandma would never like kick me out and never not talk to me again. I know that that is a fear for a lot of people, but I knew that I have like my dad's support, his girlfriend's support, for example, and I don't think she would ever react to that extent, but I knew that potentially it would change my relationship with my grandma forever, and it would make her look at me in a different way. It would make her like talk to me and like respond to me in a different way, and that has been what was holding me back because I really love her and I respect her so much. She's done so much for me. So it was honestly, it was coming from like a place of gratitude and not wanting to disappoint her because she is like a very religious person, and that was what I was worried about. After kind of reflecting those two things, I decided that it was just time to do it. Like I had to, and it felt like more disrespect to me to just continue lying to her, So that's how I made my decision personally. But for each person, of course, it's different.
Yeah, like when something's eating me up and I feel like I have to say it. Like, there is no way around that for me. And it doesn't matter where I go, the distance, even the lack of communication doesn't matter, because physical distance and communicational distance really doesn't have an impact on how I feel and what I carry. And the fact is that those kinds of feelings are just going to follow me anywhere that I go. So for me, and I know for yourself, it's important to address it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to identifying those worst case scenarios, there is the worst case scenario of like, what will they say? But there's also the worst case scenario of what will happen if I continue to keep this inside.
Yeah.
So on the other hand, if you are okay with the worst case scenario and you've come to terms with it, you've made peace with it, you've said to yourself, okay, I can handle this. I can handle the worst possible outcome. Then if the answer is yes, you can move on to the next steps.
Yeah. And I think that's really crucial, because for a lot of people, you sit and you dwell on that part of, well, what if they say this? What if they say that? It's like, well, just think about the absolute worst case scenario and then be done with that, you know, which is easier said than done, 100%. I spent like 6 years thinking of like all the different scenarios in my head. But the second I actually asked myself this question, that's kind of when it stopped for me and I just did it.
The second thing that you need to do is create a container. It really just means, to the best of your ability, creating the conditions that you need to have this conversation with calmness, with positivity, and with control. This can look very different person to person. For some people, it means meeting in a neutral spot. For some people, it means having something that soothes them, whether it be your favorite scarf or like a certain ornament or thing that like really helps you calm down. Whatever it may be, you need to identify those conditions that you need in order to feel as safe as possible in an uncomfortable position.
I would say like what I did was I prepared myself to respond to the worst case scenario, and then that made me ready for absolutely anything that she would say, which is really helpful. And one thing that I learned when I was in group therapy, I'm like a really big crybaby. Like it will like trigger at any moment, and that was kind of my biggest fear, is just sort of like taking over the group, because I'm like, I can't control my emotions. And one thing that like one of the therapists said to me was, if you just focus on your breathing, that helps a lot, because the second you start to get really emotional, sometimes you hold your breath, and that's when like tears start flowing.
That's what I do all the time. Well, or did rather, because I really did start to practice breathing, and it's helped a lot. So that's another key thing when it comes to creating the container, is potentially just breathing will be enough to soothe you and help you through such a conversation.
And I also think that the breathing kind of technique helps you to set the tone for the conversation, because things can get really emotional really quickly. And if you come in with really big emotions, then sometimes the person you're speaking with is going to match that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's very, very important, like you mentioned, to set the tone. If you come in with clarity, calmness, and control, that will just invite the other person or group of people that you're speaking to also come in with that same type of energy. And you know, at least, that no matter how they respond or whether they do get more emotional or whatever the case, you know that you can continue on with your breathing, with your calmness and your control, which does have an impact on the direction of conversation. Like
100%.
If you've ever had any sort of altercation, like with anybody, say it's with a friend, and you keep calm, they start raising their voice and you still stay calm, they will bring that down quickly most of the time.
Yeah, 100%. And it keeps things more rational. And that's where you want the conversation to be. You don't want emotions to take over the conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the next piece that we need to chat about,
which is the third major key ingredient, is to create an escape route. If you feel turbulence, please keep your hands and your feet inside of your seat. Just tuck them right in and identify all exits, which are located at the back of the plane and towards the front of the plane.
What we mean by identify all exits and make an escape plan for yourself is, if your worst case scenario happens, have a plan for yourself.
Yeah. How are you going to conclude the conversation? And then how will you take care of yourself to make sure that
you feel okay after the fact. Yeah, like how are you going to take care of yourself after this conversation if it doesn't go well, you know? Because I think if you just go home by yourself and you start spiraling, sometimes that can be dangerous for people.
Yeah.
So make sure you maybe have a friend picking you up, or if it's a supportive family member, make sure they're coming in after the fact to come and support you and back you up.
Or maybe schedule a meeting afterwards that you have to go to. Or if you're visiting your family or your friends for a couple of days, maybe it's on the last day that you have this conversation. Something that makes you feel like, okay, if everything hits the fan, I can get out of here
100%.
and I can go take care of me.
Yeah, so the way that I did it is I planned to go to my Baba's house for lunch, and I also invited my dad and his partner too to kind of be my backup. So I went in early. I asked them to come maybe like half an hour or an hour after I had been there so I could have that conversation on my own with my Baba. But if things went poorly, I knew that there was people coming in after to be like a buffer.
Escape route, yeah.
Yeah, there was an escape route. There was like a buffer after the fact. And also it was like a period of time that was going to end, you know?
Yeah. Once you've identified all of these 3 key points, you have to understand that things may go really well, they may go really wrong, or somewhere in between. The most important thing, though, for you to do here is to identify what it is that you want to say regardless of any outcome. Mm-hmm. So if it goes best case scenario, in the middle, or even worst case scenario, regardless of all of that, what do you want to get off your chest? That's the most important thing, because that is what's been eating you alive for however long. So now that we've identified the 3 key things you need to do before having this conversation, let's talk about how to approach the conversation. And the number 1 tip that I will give here before even entering this conversation is that you first have to seek to understand before seeking to be understood. Now, I know that this is something that can be very, very difficult, especially if you feel like you've been hurt by somebody in the past, or you feel wronged by somebody, or you feel just in general that you're in the right and that they should just understand, or they should just accept, or whatever the case. The thing is that as human beings, we're not perfect. Life isn't perfect. And the reality is that how you approach something is 9 times out of 10 the kind of energy that you're going to receive back. So if you come in with like, you need to understand this, you need to understand that, it might not go that well for you. But if you come in with, let me understand you, your perspective, and show you that love and respect that I want, then you might start to get some of that back. And you'd be surprised with how much love and respect and support you get back from somebody when you approach it with that mindset of first seeking to understand them before asking them to understand you.
Yeah, I think that's really beautifully said, because I think every single one of us deserves to be understood without question. You know, I don't think anybody deserves to have the people who are supposed to be loving them most disrespect them, you know, and disrespect them for something that is so fundamental to who they are that they can't change. So this is like a hard thing for people to process sometimes when you're feeling a lot of hurt and you're feeling a lot of anger towards your family. But I think it is a really valuable and like key part of this whole process that we've figured out that we think works really well.
Now, in order to actually approach the conversation, we've identified 4 key ingredients that have really helped us with our approach, and we think it may be of service to you.
The first thing is shifting your mindset from a place of resentment to a place of gratitude, which is sometimes hard, you know? This is like a hard thing to do when you're feeling a lot of rejection. Honestly, the way I felt is anger and resentment because I didn't feel like I should have to come out to anyone. I didn't feel like I should have to make this a big deal. I didn't want to have this be consuming my mind, and it starts to build up all this resentment when really a feeling that a lot of us have for our parents, especially immigrant parents, is gratitude.
Absolutely, because as much crap as you want to give somebody, especially your parents or your grandparents, there's so much that an immigrant family for their kids or for their grandkids have sacrificed in order for you to have the life that you have. And obviously for the two of us, we live in Canada. So there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of acceptance. There's a lot of privilege that we sit with being here in North America, in Canada, that just isn't possible and just doesn't exist to this extent in other countries of the world. And that's a huge thing to be so, so grateful for. And you have to realize that either your parents or grandparents, whoever, your family has made that sacrifice for you to have a better life. And here it is. You have it. Like, imagine being in that other country, wherever it may be, that isn't accepting of who you are and living either even more closeted or more bullied or overall more ashamed or hiding who you are. So you have to find things that you are grateful for, and you have to find things that you are specifically grateful for to them and put that into perspective. There's also so much else that goes on when it comes to finding gratitude and shifting your mindset. There may be other factors that just come to play, whether it be culture or religion or whatever else, that has really shaped who they are and how they raised you. And those are things that are really important to keep in mind because they're a part of them, you know, as much as like queerness is a part of you, all those other factors are a part of them, and you have to respect that same thing that you want in return, right?
Yeah. I mean, you don't necessarily have to, but in our perspective, we feel like holding on to that resentment hurts you more.
Yeah.
You know, and the way that we've learned to let go of that resentment is by shifting it towards gratitude and really thinking about all of the sacrifices that our family has made for us, and that being where that love comes from.
I feel like that, at least for me, has given me a lot of peace, a lot of gratitude, like we mentioned, a lot of happiness and joy, because holding on to things, like you said, will only hurt you more. And you're only hurting yourself, really, by holding on to these negative emotions.
Yeah. And one huge lesson that I've learned reflecting on a lot of childhood to teenage traumas, and like the way that I used to hold those against members of my family. And at first I felt like I needed an apology, like I needed some kind of resolution to make it better. And what I learned along the way is, in terms of like emotional maturity, I think our generation has a lot more access to knowledge in terms of therapy and communication and these types of things, like emotional intelligence. Sometimes you have to be okay with the fact that you're not going to get the response that you want.
Oh, yeah.
And you need to find that forgiveness and that love and that ability to let go of it on your own. I would even recommend this to someone who feels like maybe they can't have that conversation right now. Maybe the situation is just too bad. I think something that can bring you peace is by finding that gratitude and that love and that forgiveness within yourself. It may not mean welcoming that person back into your life. That might be too toxic of a situation to do, and it might be for your well-being that you stay separate. You know, and that's important to recognize, that all of our situations are different. But when we're thinking back to what we were talking about at the beginning of this episode, like the way that these feelings, these anxieties, they torment us, that's where you find your peace, honestly, is within yourself, and by moving forward and by looking at the situations and the circumstances that other people have been through and seeing them maybe not anymore as like your parent or your caregiver or your grandparent, but just seeing them as a human being experiencing life and
who's
struggling.
Not perfect, and who also most likely has their own childhood traumas that they carry, and most likely didn't have access to therapy tools that we have today. And that's just another factor of many, many factors that you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't knock trying to. Honestly, I think this process, the way that we've laid it out, and we'll move on to the next step, but I do think it has merit, and it has the ability to, I don't know, help heal situations. So the next step is painting a picture. So really what this was about to me is honestly painting the picture of what your life looks like now, showing them that you are really happy. What I've realized is our grandparents, our parents, all they want really is for us to be happy. They've come to this country, they've done everything they can to give us these opportunities, to set us up to have a happy life where we're not struggling. And when they think of queerness, they think of struggle, because in their country, that's what that would look like. It looks like a life of struggle, and they've done so much to try to give you the opposite of that. In my conversation with my baba, and the way that I started it out was I told her that I'm gay. I have a girlfriend. We've been together for 4 years. We live together. I love her very much. We've created such a beautiful life together. We work together. She makes me so happy. I told her that I have a beautiful life, and I'm so grateful to her for providing me with so many opportunities so that I could be here. And she was really receptive to that. Of course, there was like some negative reactions, you know. I mean, her initial reaction wasn't fully positive at first. Of course, she had some negative things to say about like lesbians, about queer people and her perceptions of them. And I just approached it calmly. Like I said, I was breathing through the whole situation. And when things kind of started going astray, the way that I pulled it back while I was staying very calm was just asking her like, but you still love me, right? You know, and like really drawing it down to that core element of love for each other, you know? And like she said, of course, and she gave me a big hug, and like that really meant so much to me.
Yeah. It's just like such an important element of any really difficult conversation. It's just the part of like, I may not like this, I may not understand this, but I respect you. Oh, lady.
Yeah.
It's emotional. It's an emotional thing. And, you know, it takes courage to even share the story. So I really, really commend you on that. Because the most important thing is that you two still have love for each other, regardless. You know, and that's the number one thing. And that's what it takes to build a better relationship with anybody.
Yeah.
It's like there's always going to be things that we don't like or we don't understand about each other, but we can learn about them because we love each other. That's the most positive thing, you know, even if she was like, you know, I still don't like this, whatever, but I still love you. Even if it had been that response as like the final conclusion, that would have been enough to continue trying and to continue forming this relationship with her.
100%.
And I know that that's what's enough for me.
Yeah, and like wanting to be in your family's life, you know, because
exactly,
it is important.
Of course.
Yeah. So there's kind of like a last big key, and I feel like this is a good one for you to share.
The last key ingredient to this conversation with your family is to reframe their perspective. What I mean by that is really that they come from a different time, different age, different cultural background, etc. You can add layers and layers onto that. But the thing that's important to bring it back to is to express to them that, yes, being queer makes things harder. Yes, in perhaps the country that we come from, it would be even harder than here. Yes, it means more struggle. Yes, I know that you don't want that for me. But the fact is that I'm queer regardless. I was queer, am going to be queer. And if we were somebody somewhere else, I would still be queer. And the beautiful thing is that we're here now in this country where I can be queer and fully express that. And the struggle is no longer that I am queer, therefore things will be harder. The struggle is now I'm queer and I don't have your support. So when you reframe it to actually things are even harder because I don't have your support, I think that starts to put things into perspective for some people. And I think that's an important thing to remind them of, because the thing is that our family wants us to be happy, but they also want us to be safe. They want us to be nurtured. They want us to be financially stable. All of these things that they fought so hard for us to have. And while we have a certain expectation of them, they also have a certain expectation of us, you know? And that's the thing about human beings, is that there are expectations and there are certain pre-assumptions and all these things. And we have to be able to reframe things in order to let our guards down a little bit more and just express how we truly feel. And when you reframe things, I think that allows for that guard to come down a little bit.
100%. Yeah. And I don't know, it gives people perspective as well, you know, of like something that they from an outside perspective may think is the hardest thing for you, and they think maybe it's easier for you to just try and conform and pretend that you're not queer. The reality is it's absolutely not. What is really hard is not having their support, and trying to convey that to the best of your ability, I think, is really important.
So those were the 3 key steps to take before having the conversation, and the 4 key ingredients to approaching the conversation. Now, the final thing that we're going to say is actually a bonus key ingredient, which is
your lucky day.
It's your lucky day, sure is.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. More than you expected.
So the bonus ingredient to this little gumbo is religion. It's very controversial. We won't touch into it too much. There's only really one thing that I want to say when it comes to religion, and that's that you can't tell people what to think, do, or say, or to believe. And I don't have all the answers when it comes to right things or wrong things about religion or this, and that, because the fact of the matter is that it can be interpreted. All the religions that exist out there in the world can be interpreted in many different ways, depending on the individual or depending on the family or even the culture that you come from. So my recommendation when it comes to that is to just lead by example and respect and love them for who they are and what beliefs that they have, regardless of whether or not it aligns with your own. As we mentioned before, when you show love and respect and support for someone, even if you don't agree with everything that they believe in, there is a high chance that they're going to show you that same respect, love, and support back at you. And if they don't, honestly, I think that this is where boundaries really come into play, and saying, okay, this is what you don't agree with about me. This is what I don't agree with about you. Regardless of all of this, I still love you. I still want to have a relationship with you. And more likely than not, that will allow somebody's guard to come down and start to love and accept you for who you are at your core, rather than your beliefs or preferences or any of that.
I think that has to come with boundaries as well. It's like if you're providing somebody with that level of respect, because I know you can receive a lot of disrespect when it comes to religion and being queer, depending on the religion and how it's being interpreted. It's just knowing that, or communicating that you need to receive that respect back, and setting those boundaries for yourself and for your own sanity and for your own well-being.
Yeah, and we have to come back to the realization that there is no right or wrong, really, when it comes to any religion or no religion at all, whatever the case, because we can argue all day, every single day, for the rest of our lives about who's right and who's wrong, and we're never going to get anywhere. So there's no point really in having that sort of argument, but rather just bringing it back to that love. So there is your bonus key ingredient.
Yeah. So I hope this was helpful for everybody. We really wanted for our first episode back to give you something tangible, but truly this has been something that has really helped us. We've had conversations with friends of friends who are feeling that same level of anxiety, and after sharing kind of our own experiences with them, I've noticed like a difference in the way that it's like impacted them. So we really wanted to be able to share this with our audience and hopefully impact a few other people, because this truly is like information that I wish I had access to a number of years ago.
So many numbers of years.
It kind of one of the last things I want to say is that, of course, when we're chatting on kind of a platform like this, we're not going to share absolutely everything, but if you feel like you want to chat with us more about this, if you're experiencing something like this and you want some advice, you want somebody to talk to, there's definitely like more that we can say, more that we can share, and we would be more than happy to support you. This is a community that we're growing, so reach out to us if you'd like to reach out privately via DM or drop a comment. We're always here to like love and support everybody.
Absolutely. So that is going to wrap up everything for today. Make sure that you subscribe to this channel, because we're going to be putting out a podcast regularly again, and we have a lot more content coming for you. If you would like to hear more queer coming out stories, advice, tips, and approaches, make sure to watch that video right over there. We made an entire short film dedicated to exploring queer identity and gender. And we also gave everybody surprise makeover haircuts, which is super fun.
Yeah.
It's our first short film that we've ever made, and we were super proud of it. So would appreciate it a lot if you checked it out. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next pod. Peace!
We're back.